okay, I sold my house and maybe I got lucky and broke even. Now my alternative is going and renting a single family home for $2,500 a month. I'm not going to sell the house just because my mortgage payment went to $3,000. It's going to cost me just as much to rent, and I'm not putting anything towards my equity.
Welcome to the Tom Storey Show with Steve Karrasch and Tom Storey, where we discuss everything real estate or whatever else is on our minds.
All right.
Go for it.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Tom Storey Show. I appreciate you being here. If you have not already, make sure to like this video on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. We really do appreciate your support. If you're watching us on YouTube today, you can tell that me and Steve are together again. Steve has come to his favorite place in Canada, Toronto. He doesn't pronounce the second T in Toronto anymore because he's been here enough times that he understands. Steve, what are you doing here?
What am I doing here? We just did an awesome conference yesterday.
We did.
It was fantastic. And our guest joined us at my persuasion, begging him to come out because I wanted to have you on here, actually. That's actually why I wanted you to come yesterday.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Before I introduce you, Cody, I think it's interesting that, so me and Steve kind of joke. We tell people when they ask, like, how did you and Steve meet? It's like, oh, it's a paid friendship because we paid to be in a coaching group and we're forced to be friends with each other. That first group, you were in with us, right?
Yep.
So we're all paid friends, basically.
Originally, yeah. Now we don't pay to do it anymore. Well, you guys might still be in that group. I'm not.
We're not in that group, but we still pay in different ways to be together, but not like how we met.
Yeah, but you can write it off too. So.
Yeah, exactly. It's a business friendship.
Yesterday was fantastic, though, man. That was awesome.
A lot of good.
It was really good to have those people all in the same room at the same time. For everybody, like the broke agent in the States is just huge, right?
Massive.
And then Matt blowing up here, obviously having Nolan and Brad and everybody in the same room, like that was phenomenal.
Thank you.
Bigger and better next year.
Yeah, I know. Well, the first year we did it was 40 people. It was literally in this office, Cody. It was in the room over there.
And then don't forget the actual like crazy, like Kaylee producing it. Like,
top number one agent in Canada.
Yeah.
Like we had
50-something staff.
Yeah, like such a cool. Like I still have to answer a bunch of emails. I've had all these people email me this morning, and be like, "Thank you so much. That was awesome." And so it feels nice. Feels nice that it worked. But I'm happy it's over because that was a stressful week leading up to it. Even though I don't emotionally show it, I was like inside. I was thinking about it a lot. Back to real estate, what the people want to hear. And just a reminder that this episode is brought to you by Realty Ninja. If you're looking for an awesome real estate website where you can customize it, it's going to go with the brand that you already have. And you can tweak it and you don't pay until you launch. You don't even need to give your credit card. RealtyNinja.com/Tom. Steve's been using them for 10 years and he's the cheapest person I know. So that obviously says that they are very good and worth the investment.
Fantastic.
Okay, Cody, let's introduce you. So Cody Kraus joins the show from Leamington, Kingsville, Century 21. Give me the breakdown. Where exactly is that on a map?
Sure. So Kingsville is the southernmost town in Canada. We call it the Florida of Canada. If you know where Point Pelee National Park is, we actually have a national park in Leamington. But usually I have to say Windsor. We're 40 minutes south of Windsor, 40 minutes south of Detroit is where we're located.
And that's where you grew up? That's been your whole life?
Whole life, yep. You wouldn't really know it. You probably wouldn't point to it on a map unless you're from there. But the one thing I can tell you is if you go into your refrigerator or your local cannabis retailer, most of that product comes from Kingsville and Leamington. So we're the greenhouse city, essentially. So all of the hydroponic vegetables in Canada are essentially grown within 25 minutes from my house, besides a little bit in Niagara and some in BC. But
interesting.
Yeah.
So did you guys get involved in that business at all, or were you real estate always? I know your dad was a part of the industry.
Yep. So I mean, I've been in real estate in October. Well, it's October, so 12 years now.
Wow.
Yeah. So I started at 18. I'm 30. Been on a team with my dad that my dad started about 15 years ago. I transitioned into management of the team about 5 or 6 years ago. We have since grown it, and he kind of stepped out January 1st last year, semi-retirement. So I've been running the team on my own for a year now. We have 11 realtors on the team, 2 full-time staff. And funny, we did actually steal a few of our sales reps from the greenhouse industry because that's the big industry.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. I always forget how young you are. I always feel like I'm the young guy.
No, I just look old. Yeah.
Well, I mean, compared to Steve, we're all young. But
your dad stepped out, eh? Your dad's
just semi-retired. I mean, he'll start probably still something homes this year, but like
So-
semi-retirement. Yeah.
I think that's a very interesting comment. So, in Toronto, in Steve's market, you run a real estate team that sells 100 homes a year. Like, you are very much at the top of the industry.
Yeah.
The average agent's doing 3 or 4 a year. I know we were talking before and you're like, oh, we're having a bit of a down year. We might only do over 200 this year instead of over 300. So walk me through that dynamic. Like, how do so many transactions happen in that area?
I would say probably just because there's less realtors. Like, to give you an example, when I started in 2011, there was probably 800 realtors in the area. Right now we're at 1,600. So the number of transactions per realtor is going down. Our office had its slowest month in 10 years in September. So we just had, we'll have October stats shortly, but our September stats, 353 sales. So there's essentially 700 ends on the table, 1,600 realtors. So that's the first time in a long time we've had less than one end per month on the table. Or sorry, less than half an end per month on the table per realtor in the county. That's
crazy. 10 years, September was the lowest sales volume.
Yeah. Yeah. But the prices are still high. Like, when I started, our average sale price was $167,000. And last month...
Was that 2012?
2011.
2011.
Yep. It was crazy at the time. Like, so we're right near Windsor. Windsor's part of our board. University of Windsor rental, we were selling some for like $55,000. And they had come up and expired 3 times. They'd been on the market for 18 months. You couldn't get rid of them. People were stealing the copper out of them. Flash forward 8 years, all of a sudden they're going for 200, and we're going, this market's going to fall. Like 2017, we went up 17%. We're like, no one should buy a home. We hit an average sale price of $200K, I think, in 15, and we were like, this market's never seen this. It's going to collapse pretty soon. And then Dana, our coach from RRI, he's just going, guys, what's your land value? And in about 2018, we were going, well, building lot's 80,000. It's crazy. And he goes, well, what was it 5 years ago before your prices doubled? Well, 40,000. Okay, well, what's the construction value of the house? Like, what's it sell for finished? And we said, well, $450K. And he goes, so your lot value's 80. It was 40. Does the construction value change even if the market crash that you're thinking is going to happen happens? He goes, your actual amount that you can fall by is 40,000, right? We go, yeah, when you put it
for
like
new
that.
homes, right?
Yeah,
to build new homes.
Yeah, and then 2020 happened, 2021 happened. We went up 20.5% in 2020 and then 34.5% in 21. By the March of 22, our average sale price was 703. And then by the end of the year, we were down to mid fives. Spring came back this year. We hit 603, I think, in March. And then September, our worst month as far as sales volume in a very long time, we were 353 sales on the board, average sale price of about 535.
What do you get? So if I go there and I buy something for 535, what type of house is that? What type of lot is it on?
You're getting a 1970s or 80s bi-level with a single car attached garage, full basement, 3 beds, 2 baths. Probably
updated,
kind of dated, kind of updated. Bit of both. 60-foot
livable,
lot.
but
yeah.
Interesting. That's wild. And do you think now, based on a lot of these markets kind of outside the cores of Canada saw this, right?
Yeah,
like saw this type of growth, but that type of growth is like
it was exponential, like
absurd.
2.5 times the price in 5 years, pretty much.
Were you just sitting there being like, what are people doing? Like, where were the buyers coming from? Was it all of us? It was all the Toronto people?
Some of the craziest prices were local. So what we saw happening was a lot of investors that were used to Toronto, Hamilton, Niagara. They were going, the prices here don't cash flow. Where can we cash flow? So there was a big hype around Windsor. So everybody started coming to Windsor. Then all the young families that were in Windsor were going, man, we bought this 1950s brick ranch by St. Clair College for $180,000 2 years ago. And all of a sudden we can flip it for $380 and buy a new home out in the county for $500K. We're in. So that's what was happening, is a lot of investors were coming into the city, and that pushed a lot of the locals out to the county. And then that really fueled our new home market out in the county in Kingsville, Leamington, Essex, Lakeshore, Amherstburg.
One of the things that I've been looking at recently, and I've been running this with the condo numbers in Toronto, but you could do it with any property type, is for active listings on the market, how many of them are currently being lived in by the owner versus currently rented out versus vacant. And the numbers were somewhat shocking for how many now, because during that time period, all the investors were coming in. For the listings hitting the market now, are they all investor listings? Like, who's selling?
Yeah, a lot of investors are trying to sell. A lot of them aren't selling, because if they bought in 21, their pricing's at
They're underwater.
yeah. There's a lot of people underwater. So there's, for the first time in a long time, we're going to start seeing some power sales come up. I'm supposed to be getting one next week. There's been a couple, and that's not good news. You don't want to hear that, but it's the reality of what's going to happen. Because if you bought last year and signed a 1-year mortgage, not only is your value going to be less this year, but now you're going to renew at 6% instead of 2%. So if you're an investor, those numbers don't work. But I think a lot of the families are just going to do everything they can in their power to stay in the house. So we have a lot of clients right now saying, nope, I'm going to wait, because I know a lot of the mortgages are coming up for renewal. I think the resale home market's really going to crash. And I'm going, yeah, but what's your alternative? Like in 2008, when the home prices crashed, you could go rent a house for $900 a month in our area. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the alternative is I give the bank the keys and I go rent a house, or I just dump the house, try and get my money out of it, and I'll go rent something. But now if you go rent something, like our rents probably aren't that far off from where you're at here in the city.
Really?
We're renting 2-bedroom condos for $2,500 a month. So, okay, I sold my house and maybe I got lucky and broke even, depending if I bought in 2020 or 2021. Now my alternative is going and renting a single family home for $2,500 a month. Why wouldn't I just keep paying? Say my mortgage payment went from $1,800 to $3,000.
Right.
I'm not going to sell the house just because my mortgage payment went to $3,000. It's going to cost me just as much to rent, and I'm not putting anything towards my equity.
That's something we haven't talked about, Steve, is like the people in those positions that maybe have to sell. And a lot of them are going to hold on till the very, very end. And we've had this discussion many times, but that is interesting. We're like, well, okay, once you do it, then what's the alternative? Because the thing that's gone up the most and hasn't crashed at all in the last 3 years is rental prices.
Yeah.
They keep going up. They keep going up and up. So it's like, that's a very tough decision.
Where do you go?
Right.
If you're going to sell out, that's the crazy thing, is if you can't afford your new mortgage payment, you probably also can't afford rent.
Yeah.
That's different than 10 years ago.
Totally different.
Right.
Very different.
Totally different. But with, I don't know how that's going to go. I don't know how that's going to play out, because there are, I guess, those people that had a $3,500 payment and now they're $5,600. That's going to be trouble. Right.
Yeah.
Those variable rate people and that doesn't sound like that type of payment is super common in your area.
Probably more common than we would think. Like, I ran the numbers with my wife because I'm talking about it. She goes, okay, you guys keep talking about interest rates. Like, how bad is it? So I broke it out for her and I said, we built our house in 2018. It was $440,000. We refinanced it in 2020. We have a mortgage balance of about $365, and we got a 1.92 rate locked in until the end of 25. And I said, if we were to actually renew right now, we'd probably be about 6.5. Our mortgage payment's going to go from $1,735 a month to around $2,800. So it's going to go up more than 50%. And again, what's your alternative? So now I sell my 5-bedroom, 3-bathroom home with a 2-car garage, and I go rent a condo or a wartime bungalow and pay $2,500 just so I don't make my $2,800 a month payment. And I understand there's still taxes and insurance and things like that too, but there's also costs associated in moving that are going to wipe out any savings you would have.
Why is rent so high and house prices generally so low where you are?
Because the vacancy's so low.
Was it always like that?
No,
that's a new phenomenon.
There's no vacancy in our town. Like, almost none. There is going to be some soon because there's 2 6-story condo towers opening up. And I live in Kingsville, which is a market of about 21,000 people. And they just opened 2 huge 6-story, for us, huge is 6 stories. There's a lot of people complaining.
We call those low rises in
Yeah.
Toronto.
No, that's high density for us. And so those are going to come to market. So there is going to be some vacancy. So we're probably going to see a lot of retirees coming from Windsor, London, Chatham, things like that, to rent these because there's not a ton of rental inventory. But our vacancy is very low. The greenhouse industry brings a ton of people to our area.
Okay.
A lot of people think it's just migrant labor that's actually involved in production. But if I look at the subdivision I live in, it's accountants, it's marketers, it's people involved in transport, things like that. And that's the county industry. But then you go to the city of Windsor, which has always been known for automotive, and automotive is still huge there. Like the Chrysler minivan plants in Windsor, they employ about 5,000 people. Then you have the tool and die industry. Windsor's funny because it's a border town. So what we do a lot of in Windsor is build toolings and moldings for auto parts in Windsor, and then they go over to the factories in the States after that because it's cheaper to produce it in Canada, pay Canadian dollars, and then send it back to the States. And since we're right on the border town, then we end up shipping a lot across a border there. And then the other couple big things is we just got the battery plant. They're building that in Lakeshore right now, which is a half hour from Leamington. And then they're building the Gordie Howe Bridge. because right now the Windsor Ambassador Bridge is the busiest border crossing in North America, and there's too much traffic. So they're building another bridge just for all the trucks there. And then we have a ton of healthcare workers that work in Detroit. So they would drive over every morning as a doctor or a nurse, work in Detroit, and then come back to Windsor.
Really?
So the amount of jobs in our area for a very like low density population.
Why wouldn't they just live in Detroit?
Because they like living in Canada.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's my roundabout way of answering your question. Why is vacancy low? There's a ton of jobs in our area, and they're good paying jobs for the most part. For the actual amount of people in the area, there's more jobs than you could think of.
These high-rise 6-story condos that are coming, they are condo ownership. Is any of this purpose-built rental stuff coming to your area?
So in our area, the developers that are building them are registering them as condos.
Okay.
And then if they decide to rent them out, they'll keep them and then rent the whole building. But they register the title as a condo so that if they ever decide to sell them individually, they could. They're already registered as such.
Yeah. I remember years ago, because you were kind of talking to me, because I do a lot of condos in Toronto.
Yep.
You guys were launching a condo project.
Yep.
And frankly, I didn't know there was a condo market in Leamington.
There wasn't.
Right.
No. So the one we represented was in Kingsville. It's a 6-story, which was the first time that's happened in our town. 39 units. We started marketing it in, I think, 2014 or 15. And it finally got finished to the point like people could move in. Occupancy was in April of 2019. Mm-hmm. We didn't sell the last unit until spring of 22. And that's just 39 units.
So 39 units, 6 years.
Yeah.
Was that what you expected?
We thought it was going to be quicker, and we actually had a lot of pre-sales done. But then the difference in time between the quote and the purchase order for a lot of the trades and materials went up so much that a lot of our pre-orders backed out.
Really?
Yeah, we actually had to go back to them, and the actual physical cost of building went up 12.4% from when we originally got quotes to purchase order time. Mm-hmm. So we had to go back to all the people that had pre-orders and say, this is the deal. We can't afford to build the building for what you guys are paying for it. So it's unfortunate, but we're happy to give you your deposit back, or you can agree to a higher price. And what we talked about with the developer at the time was, okay, well, if there's a 12.4% increase, why don't we do as much as we can to keep the pre-sales? So what if we average it at 12.4 and go to the pre-sales and say, everybody's is going up 12.4, but since you're a pre-sale, yours would just go up 10.4, and then the ones that were unsold, they would go up 14.4 to get that average of the 12.4 in the middle. So we still ended up keeping about 25 pre-sales, which we bought a number of them ourselves. We actually doubled down. Originally, we were only buying 2. Then we ended up buying 4 once we realized that we were already buying 4% under market value. And we saw the trend of the prices going up at the same time. So we figured, well, you know what? We might as well, if we really believe in the product, why don't we buy it ourselves too?
This episode is brought to you by Realty Ninja. Real estate agents, listen up. Realty Ninja has created over 9,000 Canadian real estate websites, and they are no joke. I've been using Realty Ninja in my business since they were a small little startup in North Vancouver. Tiny, dusty little office with old leather couch and all. But look at the ninjas now. Realty Ninja is the go-to platform for real estate agents in Canada. Websites are no longer a nice to have. They are a must. Your clients expect you to feature their listings in the best light possible. They expect you to go with Realty Ninja. The backbone of my real estate business is my website. I wouldn't pick any other company to host my website other than Realty Ninja. Don't believe me? Go to my website. Check it out right now. Go to krproperties.ca and you will see that it's powered by Realty Ninja and has been for over a decade. They have all of the features I need to grow my business year after year, including lead capture, mobile-friendly design, built-in SEO, and so much more. The best part of Realty Ninja is it's totally free to sign up, no credit card is required, and you only pay when you are ready to launch your new Realty Ninja website. And no, that's not it. Sign up today at realtyninja.com/Tom, and you will receive 20%, yes, 20% off of your entire first year when using Realty Ninja to host your real estate website. Their templates are super easy to work with yourself, or you can have the ninjas design something for you like I did. Not only is Realty Ninja the best product on the market, but it's also affordable. Listeners of this show know that I am as cheap as they come, and I've been using Realty Ninja for well over a decade now. Start your free trial today, and when you launch, save 20% using our link in the description below. And let Realty Ninja help you take your real estate business to the next level. And now, back to the podcast.
And now that building now complete, 39 units.
Yep.
Is it a 50-50 split between renters and owners? What does it look like?
Yeah, probably about 50-50. We have one gentleman from Vancouver that owns 7 units in the building, and we rent them out for him. We have a number ourselves. My mom sold her business and then ended up using the money from selling the business to buy a condo in there too. So we're pretty active in that condo still, even though they're all sold, just because we manage a lot
Is
of
it called
units.
Kraus Condos?
No, it's not. No, Lakeside Park Place, but Kraus House Management is the
Is the
rental company.
okay,
So,
there you go. So you're involved in there.
Yeah.
But
was that hard to like just get through? The Nimbyism must have been painful to
We
go at
actually-
the crazy like height of 6 whole stories.
Luckily, we didn't actually get involved in that part of it.
No.
The developer came to us when it was already,
already
rezoned and approved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about the sentiment though? Just as you're marketing that property in the community, of something that's changing from basically all single family to now density.
Yeah, it's bad. So again, town of 20,000 in Kingsville, and there's a Facebook group, and I call it the anti-development group, but it's NIMBYs is what it is, and they're incredible. Like nobody was ever involved in our town politics ever, and all of a sudden there's a couple hundred people showing up at town hall meetings because there's people that live on heritage homes and the main streets going, we don't need more traffic. And to be fair, the traffic scenario is a lot worse in our town than it used to be. And I say that lightly because we're in the city of Toronto right now, and we were coming down the 401 to get here 2 nights ago.
Yeah.
We hit standstill traffic at a half hour after midnight. So we left Wheatley at 8:30 p.m. thinking we'd pull up to our hotel at 12:30 just after midnight. It was almost 2 o'clock by the time we got. So I'm going, okay, our traffic isn't that bad. We think it's really bad when it takes 10 minutes to get down Main Street in our town.
I went on a rant on last week's episode about traffic. Like it is the worst I have ever seen it. It's bad. I'm finally like coming to the realization of like, I think I agree with Steve on like all this housing is good. All these people coming here are probably good long term.
Yeah.
But like we don't have the roads for it.
But do they all have to be within
Do they all have
4
to live?
kilometers of the CN Tower?
Well, they
Like,
seem to be.
Yeah, where are most of our immigrants coming from, though? Like generally warmer countries, they're not going to want to move to Edmonton voluntarily. And I'm not saying Toronto's warm, but
Warmer than Edmonton.
You know what? It was like 20 degrees out here today. I just went to get a Starbucks and I was like, man, no jacket. It was fantastic.
Yeah,
It was
it's really
better
nice
than
out.
better than home.
yeah.
It was,
but we need the immigrants because we don't have the birth rate.
Yep.
well, there's definitely that. But here in Toronto,
Your
like,
family's helping Canada. Yeah. You got
you
4.
guys are-
Yeah, we have 4, 6, and under.
the amount of people, I must have made this comment 4 times to Tom, like the amount of people walking in as we've been going around, as we were walking downtown, but the amount of people just today on the way here, the amount of people crossing the street, I was like, man, everybody's on foot. And the traffic's still here.
Yeah, both my sisters lived downtown Toronto for quite a while, and they would have us come and visit them, and we're pulling up with our minivan and 3 kids coming. And I hated life, every second of it. But once I realized you just park the car and you don't drive anywhere, you just walk everywhere, you can actually enjoy it a little bit. But if you're trying to drive around this city, it's the absolute worst.
It's getting in, getting out, and getting around sucks.
Yeah.
Once you're stationary, it's pretty fun.
I did have a question for you, and that was in regards to, I figure you're probably the best one to ask, because I don't know anybody else that probably services an area where this would affect, but the migrant worker thing
Huge.
and housing.
Yeah.
Explain to me, because all I know is apparently, I never see them. Apparently there's people that don't live here, that just come here for work, that maybe get underpaid, and then where do we put them?
It's incredible. So Leamington, Kingsville, especially because of the greenhouse industry that we have here, generally the production, so the actual picking of the vegetables, things like that is migrant labor. They come in for 9 to 10 months and then leave for 2 and then go back. A lot of Jamaica, Mexico, Peru. There's even some Asian countries too. So they're coming here on temporary work visas essentially. And there is almost an epidemic of them just not leaving.
Oh, okay.
And so they're staying, and in the town of Leamington especially, we have some rentals there. You'll have all of a sudden a landlord come in, posed to be a couple. This happened to a client of mine. Literally, I could tell you the address. They posed as a couple with 2 kids, made a deal to rent the house from the landlord for $2,500 a month. And the landlord didn't think anything of it. He was getting his rent every month. He never had to drive by. He didn't have to go there to fix anything. All of a sudden they get a call. from the township the one day saying, you need to come to the home right now. The fire department's here, bylaws here. There was 30 people living inside the home. So this couple would go around, rent homes, and then put up 2x4 walls down the living room. In the basement, there was people sleeping in the closet underneath the stairs. They were calling that a bedroom, and they broke it out into 12 bedrooms and charged $600 a month to each couple. So they were bringing in $7,200 a month in rent cash from people that are here on expired visas that came to work.
Oh, so their visa expires
And
they're
don't-
supposed to be gone. They don't leave, and then they find themselves in being taken advantage of by.
Everything about that's terrible. Like that whole situation, just like what they have to live in, what the people are doing, everything involved with it.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but the reality is, if you go into your refrigerator right now and you have cucumbers, tomatoes, or peppers, there's no way that we can have those in Canada year round grown in our country if it's not for the greenhouse industry. And Canadians don't want to go work in the greenhouse industry, so you have to bring in migrants.
So do the migrant workers get paid less than like minimum wage, or do they get?
No, they
minimum
get paid
wage?
minimum wage.
Yeah.
Now their countries take a portion of that, so they have to pay Canadian income tax, and then their respective countries take a tax also. So they might end up keeping around 50% of that. Their employers are required to house them. So the people that honor the contract and come when they're supposed to come and leave when they're supposed to leave and then renew their visa and come back, they're taken care of very well. Their employers have to house them. Typically, they're in new accommodations because the greenhouse industry has grown so quickly that they've been having to put up new housing for these guys.
Are those like apartment buildings, or are those like portable housing?
They're
units?
called bunk houses. Some of them are built like a pole barn style. Some of them are steel structures. And essentially, you have a whole bunch of bedrooms, a central kitchen area, and then some bathrooms and things like that. And then they have a hangout area outside with a soccer field and things like that. So if they honor the program, they leave when they're supposed to leave, and then they come back the next year, they're taken very well care of, and they have accommodations provided for, so they don't end up in these really compromised scenarios.
But you're saying a lot of them aren't honoring, they're staying, and that's where the issues are
Yeah,
coming
so
up.
Kingsville and Leamington, if you put their populations together, maybe 55,000 on an annual basis, there's probably somewhere from 10 to 12,000 migrant workers coming in every year to this very small two towns to work in that industry. So I wouldn't say, thousands,
Right.
but hundreds probably.
Wow.
Yeah, and it, like you said, everything about it is unfortunate. Should they honor their visa and go back to their country and then come back again? Absolutely. But a lot
Do
of them,
they stay working for the same greenhouse then, or do their contract end and then they just find other work?
they have to find other work, usually cash.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then they're just, they're put up. So those people that are coming in, are they generally young men? Is it a mix of everybody? Who's
Almost
coming?
all young men. There's starting to be some women now, but it's almost all men, and not even just young men. Like, I have friends that are greenhouse farmers, and a lot of them have had the same guys come into their farm for 20 years. They got good relationships. Pretty much everybody in our town worked in a greenhouse at some point. So like in high school, I was picking some tomatoes and things like that, and I started getting to know some of the guys that I was working with at my greenhouse. They're showing us pictures of the house they're building, motorcycles, pictures of the kids, the whole, like, they're doing very, very well in Jamaica and Mexico and Peru, if they keep coming and working for 9 months and then leaving for 3. But you have to be away from your family for 9 months.
My
And
goodness.
Hey, with a certain amount of kids, that would be all right sometimes, right? No? Not funny?
Not funny, Steve.
I'm
getting
enjoying
away
the
for 2
I'm
days.
enjoying the 2 nights away from my family right now. So that's all
I
I'm
still like my kids, Steve.
saying. I like my kids now. I told you this the other day.
Yeah,
Now
he
that
really
they're a
likes
little
his
bit
girls
older,
now, yeah.
Now that they're a little bit older, when they were young, I was having difficulty, but now that they're older, it's awesome. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
You still like your 4? Yeah, all
Ours
good.
are awesome. Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. Where I wanted to take the conversation next was, I know you have also, you don't just sell a lot of homes, but you've invested in real estate.
Yep.
And then it's interesting because when we look at different markets across Canada, why do we buy real estate? Well, we buy because of appreciation of price. We buy because of cash flow. And these days, cash flow is really the thing that people are looking for, but it's very difficult unless you bought the property 10 years ago or you're buying cash or putting 50% down. But then also looking at tenant profile, and where one, this is a long question. I think you know where I'm going with this, but let's start where, like, your investment journey in real estate. Where did you start? Are you still holding a lot of real estate, or have you kind of sold it off over time?
Do you want me to start at day one?
Yeah, day one.
Okay,
Yeah.
so realtor, and I'm sitting there going, Dad, we have a lot of clients that are buying homes and making money on these homes every month. I said, as a realtor, we make money on the home once when we sell it to them. great because we make a decent commission, but we need to start establishing residual income coming in. And he owns some apartment buildings with partners, I think in the 80s, sold all of them to open a bar, closed the bar within 3 years. So he's like, I've already had that part of my life. I don't really want to do it. But I kept bugging him. And we bought our first, it was a power sale. It was a wartime home near the University of Windsor, $105,000. And we started buying homes in our personal names because it was really easy to get the financing through RBC. They would give you 80% of the rental income monthly towards the debt servicing ratios.
Really?
Yeah, where
80%.
most banks were 50 at the time. So RBC was doing it for 80%. So even if you didn't have a huge income, they could do a market rent appraisal and say, okay, well, if you're bringing in $2,000 in rent, $1,600 of that can go towards your TDS. So I was like, okay. So that worked for us. And we ended up getting to 5 properties. And then RBC said, we can't give you mortgages anymore. After 5, you don't get any more.
Yeah.
So we started going, okay, well, what do we do now? And we realized, okay, well, we should probably incorporate a holdings company. So we went to Bank of Montreal, and they were actually financing our rental homes at just 20% down, which most commercial banks didn't want to. They wanted 35% down. So really long learning process. We ended up selling everything that we owned personally to our corporation, which we had to pay capital gains. We also had to pay land transfer tax. Then we had to pay for the closing, the discharge of the mortgage. So it was really expensive to get them out of the personal name into the corporate name. But we realized at some point we had to separate them.
Worth it long term, though?
Long term, yeah.
Yeah.
And especially from a bookkeeping and accounting standpoint, like it's so much easier. You got one debit card. It's all coming out of the same account. So it was a expensive learning process. But now I can coach my clients through it and say, look, if you just want to buy 1 or 2 rentals, I really strongly recommend you just do it in your personal name. The refis are easy. You can pull out the money, no questions asked, as long as you meet the TDS ratios. But if you want 5 or more, you need to incorporate, and you should do it from day one so that you don't incur the expensive changeover later. So I didn't finish university. I did 1 year of university. So now whenever I lose money on an investment, I look at it and now go, okay, well, I could have spent $50,000 or $80,000 on university, but if I screw up in the real estate market and learn something from it and then just pass that along to my clients, well then, okay.
Yeah.
I look at it as education now.
I remember, I think Steve, you were probably on this call when we used to do presentations to each other in the mastermind group.
Yep.
And yours was specifically about like, don't give clients advice on something that you haven't done.
Yep.
And I thought that was, I mean, it makes total sense when you say it out loud, but I think a lot of people are, and not to say if you're a real estate agent, you don't own a home that you can't be a good real estate agent, but like you were basically saying, I had to go through this process so that the advice I gave people is something I've actually done.
Yep.
And it's, again, saying it out loud is like, well, obviously, but it's not that obvious.
Yep. No. And so after that, we actually got into mini storage. We bought a mini storage facility and we brought in 2 more partners. Now all of a sudden we have a second corporation. We ran that for 3 years. It was a really cool business. Kind of wish now I hadn't have sold it, but at the time it was becoming too much of a hassle to management. And I look back now and I'm like, stupid idiot. You should have just hired more people.
Yeah.
But anyways, we're past that, bought some land with that, just like little tiny lots here and there, info lots and stuff like that, and sold one, kept one. Then we had this condo development. So we doubled down and we ended up buying 4 condos, and then we ended up making it a 5th because we wanted to buy one of them to use as a model suite.
Okay.
So that we actually had the builder finish that one unit for us quicker than the rest of them, staged it, used that as the model suite, used it to sell and rent all the other ones. And at that time, we had done our projections on a cash flow basis that the rent would probably be $1,850 per condo when they were completed. And at the time, we were paying $400,000, give or take, depending on the floor and
For the
view,
unit.
For the unit. Okay. So they weren't making money by the time you paid the condo fees. Condo fees were low initially; they were $240 a month. Taxes are still only $1,900 a year right now on those condos.
How big is the average condo in that building?
1,130
So
square
I think that's the difference too. I think our listeners and viewers need to know is like the condos you're talking about are 1,200 square feet, not 400 square feet.
Yeah, but now the market that we're in, people are like, this is a shoebox. They're coming from a detached home with a full basement, a 2-car garage, and a fenced yard.
But the old wartime bungalow is only 1,200 square feet, maybe.
Yeah.
Right?
If you got land, Steve, if you got land.
I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. So we were buying those, and they were carrying, but all of a sudden the rents started going up, and now all of a sudden we're renting those units for $2,400 and $2,500 a month. Some of the mortgages are old, some of them are new, but they're carrying. They're not making good money, but they're carrying. But we never hear from the tenants. We're renting out a new property. They're typically retirees. They pay cash. Sometimes we offer them $50 off a month, and they pay a year up front in cash.
Because where I wanted to go with this is most people would say, well, if you could choose between a condo or a house and the pricing was not that much dissimilar,
Yep.
you would buy the house.
Yep.
As an investment, right?
Yep.
You buy the house, you buy the land, you want to own as much dirt as possible. That's kind of been my mindset kind of
Yep.
moving forward here in my life. But house tenants are different than new condo tenants, at least in your experience.
Yeah. So if you can buy a condo for $500 right now and break even, you can go buy a detached home for $400 and carry. I wasn't getting great tenants in my single families because they typically weren't the greatest neighborhoods. And with that came other problems. Sometimes people weren't working. All of a sudden, money wasn't coming in. I've sold 3 single family homes over the last year that we owned just because it was brutal. Our last eviction took 16 months. We haven't seen a penny from it. So they lived in the house. We had to cut the grass, pay the bills, pay the mortgage payment, pay the taxes, and we didn't see rent for 16 months. That's how long the eviction took. And that was doing it with a paralegal. All our I's
Right.
were dotted, T's were crossed. We had a hearing, and literally the adjudicator they're supposed to make their decision within 4 to 6 weeks after a hearing. We didn't hear anything for months. It might have been like 4 or 6 months. And then all of a sudden we get a letter saying that there needs to be a new hearing. So essentially the adjudicator quit, never made their decision. And then we had to have another hearing. And then luckily they did something quick after that, but 16 months without rent. We had another one where the lady was trashing the house. She was a drug dealer. I should have done a lot better job vetting the tenant. To my detriment, I guess. I was not vetting them very well. I was more depending on a property manager at the time. One of them was an up and down, so I let the down tenant pick the upper because I said, you guys are going to have to get along.
Right.
And anyways, really bad. So we ended up doing a cash for keys, and she took the cash and still didn't leave. And you still need an order to get them out after that. So she took the cash, still didn't leave. We ended up having to get an order. Then I got emotional and fire sailed that one. But typically you're right, where if you can own the house and break even or cash flow positive, you take it. But you definitely have to look at the tenants that you're attracting, because you could say, okay, it's going to go for $2,500 a month. That's great until the 4th month rolls around and you don't get rent. Right. Where with the condos, you're dealing with cash rich retirees. And if you think about it this way, I've talked to a lot of my clients about it. I said, look, you can sell your home for $600,000. I know you want to live in a condo. You could go buy it if you want. You're going to have the sale proceeds for it. But if you take $500,000 cash and put it in a GIC right now, you're probably making 5.2, even if it's only 5%.
Yeah.
500,000 is $25,000 a year you're making in a GIC. If your rent is $2,500 a month, you're almost covering your rent with interest from a GIC if you go take that money and put it in a house. And then when you do pass, your kids don't have to go through probate, all that kind of stuff. You got the money sitting in a GIC, the executor is good to go.
So what we just went through there is basically the issues that you had with the tenants on the freehold side. You know, as we all know, the landlord tenant board leans very tenant heavy, and even if you do things the right way, like not all landlords are bad people. Like that's kind of like the YouTube comment idea of how this works. That's not the case at all.
No.
Not all tenants are bad people.
No,
right?
I would say 80% are great.
Yep.
But if you don't try really hard to make sure you're getting that 20%, or sorry, that 80% that are good. And the big thing now is I don't take a tenant without a credit check. Have to have a credit check.
100%.
But at the time I was going off of their story, how I interacted with them as a person, really wanted to see the best in them.
So nice.
But now even credit check and employment, it's like making sure it wasn't doctored or like photoshopped. And like when you call the reference and they really, we've had this a lot where we call in our rental listings. We're like, hey, we're just calling about this person that confirming they make this amount of money. And like, yes, yeah, they've been working here. And when it's really quick, it's like they put their friend's number.
Yeah.
So there's all this stuff going on.
Or their landlord that wants to get rid of them.
Or their landlord's like, this person sucks. I'm going to say whatever to get them out of my place.
Yeah.
I never call the number supplied.
Well, usually, yeah.
So my tenant process is for sure credit check. There's no such thing as a bad tenant with an 800 credit score. They just don't exist. So if you have an 800,
well, unless they just got a credit card and they've had 3 payments,
you don't get you don't get it that quick.
Yeah, that's a
so
good point. You gotta get it up.
if you score over 800, you're
take 'em
my
every time.
tenant pretty much.
Yeah.
How many people have an 800 credit?
Good people have an 800 credit score.
I haven't checked
Tom
my credit in a
Storey.
long time.
Well,
I'm
we're
in
gonna
the,
check
I'm
it.
in
We're
the
gonna
high
find
sevens, I
out.
believe. My last one was like 781, but I pulled that years ago.
Killing me.
I pay everything
If
on
you don't
time.
have over 800, we can't be friends anymore.
You know what? After this episode,
We're
I'll take a
gonna
look
do
at
it.
my computer
We're
and
gonna
we'll
do it.
Gonna bring
find
your
out.
score down. If you check.
So over 8, I run it through an online tenant check
Front lobby.
company. It's actually called tenantscore.ca. We should probably reach out to them and see if they want to sponsor the podcast. They're a phenomenal service.
There's 3 now, right? So there's the one that you just mentioned, then front lobby and single key.
I don't know the other ones.
No.
I've never heard of any of those.
Well,
We
they're-
just use Equifax or TransUnion. Like that's how they'll send us theirs, and we have our own account, and with their permission, we can pull their credit.
Now with front lobby and single key, you can get the credit check from Equifax through those programs. So it's like an online tenant application portal, which is probably the same as
Well, what I do the application, then I send them the application. They basically score the tenant to say how likely are they to pay the bill. Basically,
Okay.
is how it comes down. And then when I check references, I always ask for the employer. I never phone the number that's given to me on like the application. I always Google the company, phone that number, and then ask.
But you see how far they're going these days? Like Scrinco put out that video where it was like a fake letter,
Fake
and then
company.
a fake LinkedIn account, a fake company website.
Well, we're
Like,
not seeing that. We're not that
They
sophisticated.
went to
in
like
Surrey yet.
real depths of it's crazy.
So I would assume, ideally, if you go to an online company to check their credit at that point, hopefully that also gets around it. But one thing I do is I ask for a personal reference, and I want, ideally, close family, because guess who's going to rat you out the easiest? Sorry, it's your mom or your aunt or whoever you're living with or whatever.
Do you need insurance? The answer to that question is obviously yes, of course you do. Whether you are a tenant, landlord, or homeowner, you need to insure your property and belongings. And when I insure my investment property, personally, I choose Square One. Square One is affordable online insurance for everyone. If you apply for your Square One insurance policy using the link in the description of the show notes, listeners of the Tom Storey Show can receive $20 off right now, simply by going to squareone.ca/the Tom Storey Show. Square One is no joke. I personally use Square One for my landlord policy on my investment condo. I picked Square One because they were easier to work with than other insurance companies. And when I had an issue with my previous policy coverage in relation to my Strata's coverage, Square One was the insurance company that came up with a solution for my insurance problem at an affordable rate. Online quotes take less than 5 minutes with Square One. Get your home insurance quote today at squareone.ca/the Tom Storey Show and save $20.
And
Because
it's,
I would think the close family would lie for them, though. No,
you would think, wouldn't
right? You would think.
Not the case at all. You usually get the dirt from the personal reference as long as it's family and it's not like a friend that knows this is their job. But if you talk to their mom, well, yeah, you know, Jimmy's pretty good, but I just wish he would clean his room a little more often.
moms know that kids need tough love too,
You
though,
get
right?
that.
So
You get that. So that's my way, and so far I've been really good. I've kept one damage deposit. Other than that, I think I've been pretty good.
You know, it's kind of interesting. I never thought about this, but all my condo tenants, I've never had an issue ever. But my freehold townhouse tenants, they kept paying me,
They just didn't want
but
to go.
they would not leave.
Yeah.
So I had to go to court. I had to do the whole thing. That took 9 months.
yeah,
For me to move back into my own house, I gave them their month rent, like
did everything right.
everything the right way. That someone probably just told them, just say no.
You know,
It's going to take some time.
we had one client. She was trying to come back from the States. They moved over there for work. They were trying to move into their house. Did everything the right way. They just didn't leave. So this family came back ready to move into the house, and the guy's still in the home. And
So all these horror stories, though, you know, people listening to this that are potential investors are like, well, is this even worth it? At these interest rates, I'm just putting my money into a GIC, right? Like that's what I'm going to do. And then because it's so one-sided, and we always talk about this, like are investors the problem or are they part of the solution because at least they're creating the inventory that's coming and they're bringing more. But if we do all these things that, because right now, like no investors are really buying any of my listings. Are your investor clients active right now? Are they? But they're still waiting for the next.
they're not really active unless there's a fire sale.
You're right.
I mean,
they
we're-
want blood. Is
yeah.
basically
We're buying some and building some right now, but it's stuff that we started last year or the year before anyways. I'll tell you a little bit of a story. So I have this client. He was a super wealthy dude, really, really smart, owned over 100 doors, mix of single family and apartments, things like that. He's sitting under a tree in his backyard one day and he goes, a really good year, my apartment building makes me 3%. And he goes, I can buy dividend earning stocks right now, including REITs, that get 6 to 7% annually. So he sold his entire portfolio in 3 years, kept one building just as a part of diversifying his.
How old was he?
He's in his 50s.
Okay, so he's not like 70 doing.
No.
Okay.
When
No.
was this?
He sold them all over the last 3 years.
Really?
Yeah.
I hope he didn't put that money into REITs right now.
He's mostly in Canadian dividend earning stocks and doesn't care about the day-to-day value of them, focuses only on the dividends. And he's going, I'm making 6 and 7%, and I can leverage that too. He actually goes to the bank and gets more loans against that and then goes and buys more with it. High level income. So he can go, okay, well, I can write off 50% of the interest from the credit used against the stock portfolio anyways. And I said, well, that's great when you have a $10 million net worth of
Right.
real estate that you sell and then you can just go put it into the REIT and make your 6%. Yeah, it's a pretty good thing. But I said the whole allure of buying real estate in the first place is leveraging it 4 to 1, right? You
Well,
put
how
your
did he
20%
get? How did he
down.
get to that position?
He had to mortgage his
Right.
way up to it. I
But
said that's-
in the last 60 days, I agree. I don't care what the value is either of my portfolio in stocks and Canadian bank stocks and Canadian REITs. But right now,
it doesn't look good.
it doesn't look good, man.
Yeah.
I want to say something like one of the healthcare REITs that I have went from like $16 a share to $4. Like that's not cool. The dividends are great,
Yeah.
but it's now.
Oh, and he's doubling down right now. I'm texting him the other day, and I'm like, it's been a rough month or two. And he goes, there's blood in the water. Buy more.
Right now, I agree. Right,
Yeah.
that there's a very good chance of that. I don't know how this is going to go because I just watched a video this morning about that and how this is the worst time for rich people, and it's only going to create even more rich people
Yep.
at the other side because the really savvy ones are buying like crazy.
Oh, the
right
gap's
now.
going to get huge. It already got big over COVID, but it's going to get way bigger
The
now.
only thing is the COVID bounce back, the shutdown, the fake shutdown of the market basically tanked everything, and then the return was also
Big.
just too big.
Yep.
This is going to be a much deeper, kind of longer recession, longer for those to come back. But when they do come back, man, those guys are going to have it all.
So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this because we have weekly meetings with our team, and I've been telling people lately, I think that pretty soon REITs are going to own almost all the apartment inventory in Canada, and that people are just going to buy REITs instead of owning real estate. They're going to go, okay, well,
It's a great option
You actually could. Yeah.
to invest.
Yeah.
Why not? I think you should actually own part REITs as part of your real estate investment portfolio.
right now, CMHC offers up to 50-year amortization and 95.5 LTV on the building costs. So you own the land, you go to them, you can get a 95% loan and amortize it over 50 years. It's really expensive to build right now, but if you can amortize over 50 years and your rents are growing every year, it looks pretty good for a REIT. But I could see a lot of people just going, look, it's the buy-in on the market's tough right now. In Kingsville, you could buy a brick bungalow 6 years ago for $200,000 to $230,000. Okay, you save up your 10% and it's a $23,000 down payment. Now that same brick bungalow is probably $500,000. 5% is now the 10% that you used to have. It's pretty tough to get into the market right now. So I could see a lot of people just going, okay, not sure I'll be able to get into the market. I want to rent a nice apartment. I might as well buy shares in the REIT that owns the building I live in.
Is that just the path you think? Because I get what you're saying, but they still have to live somewhere.
Yeah.
And rent's not cheap.
Nope.
Like that same comparison could be made for what rent was, 5-10 years ago,
Yeah.
where rent's at a much higher place, and that money's just
Yeah.
gone every month.
I think I'm probably talking about cities too, though, because like if you had to look at ownership versus tenant in Toronto, I would imagine there's significantly more rentals than privately owned units.
For condos?
Everything. So, I mean, obviously you have your 100% ownership apartment buildings, and then a lot of
Well, it's a
investors
good
own
question. I
condos.
don't know. Like all the old ones were owned by big companies,
Yeah.
but then the condo boom the last 10 years are all individually owned, and we're slowly now seeing new purpose-built rentals. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I think actually right now it might be more individually owned.
Okay.
But we're
Owner-occupant.
pushing towards more of the REITs, the REOCANs owning these buildings. And
Yeah, so what I've been saying to them is I feel like pretty soon all the single family homes are only going to be owned by owner occupants. I don't think you're going to see too many landlords owning single family homes anymore. The prices came up really high.
it's too high to buy for an investment.
Doesn't cash flow anymore. If you've owned it for 10 years, there's going to be a point where you go up. It is costing me headaches. It's an older home. The roof's coming up. The furnace is coming up, all these things. Why wouldn't I sell that?
Right.
And now I either go and buy a condo that has almost no headaches, or I just put the money in a REIT instead. So I think you're going to see a transition of no landlord-owned single-family homes pretty soon, maybe in the next 10 years, or very few anyways. And I think a lot of those landlords are going to put their money in the market, and if they're comfortable with real estate, it's going to end up being REITs. And then I look at the purpose-built rentals, they're only going to be owned by REITs for the most part anyways.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're going to just be
That's all it
massive
is.
corporations for sure. That's funny that you say that. Like maybe buy into the REIT of which you live.
Yeah.
Makes a ton of sense. It's almost like getting some of your money back. I
That's
say the
what my
same thing.
thought is.
Yeah.
The same thing to people that complain about big banks and the bankers are trying to steal our money and all
Invest
this
in the
stuff. I'm
banks.
like, why
Buy
aren't you
their
buying
stock.
bank stock? Like you literally are just getting your money back.
Yep.
But most people aren't going to go there, I guess.
So where do you think this takes the market? Like, what do you expect in your market the next 12 to 18 months?
Flat.
Flat.
Yep. Like I said, we were up around 600 in March. We had a bit of a spring boom, but then those rates kept coming up and it settled down. I would expect that our average sale price is still going to remain around that 500 or slightly higher. We were at 535 in September. We'll probably be around 540 if I had to guess in October. But I think the prices are going to stay in that high fours, low to mid fives, probably for the next 18 months. I don't think we're going to see a lot of growth. People are not building homes in our market right now. We saw a crazy amount of new construction. It was incredible.
Yeah.
Now, like, cost of construction hasn't come down. It's still going up, even while these interest rates are going up. The land values in our area, they went from 40,000 in 2015 when I built my first house to 80,000 3 years later. Now a single family building lot, 60-foot lot, is 250 to 300 in our area. And so these builders that bought at the new lot pricing at 250 to 300, they build the home. By the time they're ready to put it on the market, they can't sell it for what they have into it, because we've had really stringent covenants in the new construction developments in our area where, for example, most of them, you couldn't build a raised ranch. It had to be a ranch or 2-story. You'd have to build at least 1,800 square feet, no vinyl siding, only brick, stone, stucco, and you have to have a minimum 2-car garage. So at $350 to $400 a square foot, if you're building a 2,000 square foot home, you can't really put it up for less than $700,000. You add a $250,000 lot to it, you're almost at $1 million before you add a driveway and a fence. And our average sale price in our area is $550.
I'm assuming brick is more expensive than vinyl siding. So they're basically making you build unaffordable housing
That's
because they want it to look nice, or
I had a conversation with a mayor in our area. I'm not going to name anything. And I said, you know what the problem is? There's no affordable new homes because all the new home developments have had very stringent covenants. And she goes, none of the homes in my town have covenants. I said, every single new development. I said, if we go to the development by the golf course, you cannot build a home less than 2,000 square feet. That's why there's no affordable housing being introduced to the market.
And the mayor doesn't know this?
I said, what you guys need to be doing as town council and mayors is you need to be encouraging developers to do developments with 30 and 40 foot lots instead of minimum 60 and 70 foot. You need to encourage less stringent neighborhood covenants. You need to allow people to have vinyl siding. You need to allow people to do less than 1,800 square feet, less than 1,400 square feet. Essentially, let them build whatever they want to build. It's still going to be a new home. It's still going to look really good. It's just not going to be $1 million home as a standard.
and if they're going to be 2,000 or 2,400 square feet or something, maybe that's a duplex, right?
Yeah,
Why
except
not?
the people building in those neighborhoods, a lot of times the reason they bought into it was because of the covenants. So they want this degree of housing, and then they really don't want rentals.
Right.
Because rentals are a bad word in a nice neighborhood.
So then fast forward 10 years from now, we'll take ourselves out of today's conversation and what's going on with interest rates and markets dropping off and yada, 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 right? We can talk about this all day long.
Yep.
What's going to happen in 10 years? We're not building. It's really expensive to build. You can't build affordable housing. The city's not making it any easier. And this isn't just like a your area problem. This
No,
is
it's
like,
everywhere.
this is Canada, right? Like, we've talked about this so much. What's going to happen?
I heard in Ontario that 31 cents of every dollar of construction goes to a government of some level, whether it's municipal, provincial, or federal. 31 cents of every dollar.
Yep. No, why I like to bring up your situation is my thing is always, people are always going to say that housing is unaffordable, no matter how affordable or unaffordable it really is.
Yeah.
They're always going to do it. And I use you as my example because when we were in that mastermind, one of your first calls was we were discussing market share and market pricing. And you said, like, the people are having a real trouble here because we went from, I think it was $230,000 one year to now $305 as our average price.
Something like that. Yeah.
And it was like, the people were like, this is unaffordable. And Tom and I are both sitting here going, well, 305 doesn't buy you a 1-bedroom condo where we are, right?
Yep.
So no matter how affordable, and then we even talked about incomes, and incomes aren't much
They're
different.
not that much different.
No,
where you
ours, depending on the neighborhood, they might be higher. Yeah.
So no matter what, people are always going to complain about
It's
the
true.
cost of living. I don't think anybody's ever going to say, no, that's totally reasonable at any point in time. Because why? They want more to spend on their family and having fun and investing and doing different things, and they don't want to spend on housing. But last time I checked, everybody wants to still be inside, and they want to live somewhere, and they ideally want to own what they live
The
in.
rate of ownership has gone down the last 5 years in Canada. It'll probably, the way that we are going with the purpose built and everything else coming, it's like right now, I think it's like 65% of Canadians own, right? The rest rent, but which came down from, I think 69% was the high. It's probably going to keep pushing down. It's going to get to a point where it's like, you have to have a lot of money to own, depending on where interest rates are. Otherwise, you're renting.
We're going to have the same old fight, though. I think that's the younger generation not caring as much.
Well, if you look at the city, though, like, I'm blown away driving around the neighborhoods here. We ended up in East York this morning. We were just driving around randomly. We saw like a wartime bungalow, and I said to Abe and Jake, I'm
You
like,
look it up?
"Guys, pull it up real quick.
Yeah.
1.35, and I'm like, man,
A 25 by 100 lot.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm going, okay, well, if you look at the city, they're only building purpose-built rentals. Why would you start a single-family neighborhood in Toronto? Because
You can't.
you look at the amount of square footage for the development. Do I put up 4 homes or a 56 floor
You
condo?
literally can't put up 4 homes. Like, there's no land. You can't do it.
Yeah. So
Unless
in
you
the
buy
cities-
4 homes, knock them down, and then put a condo in that.
Yeah. So in the cities, I see them only building purpose-built rentals and condos. In more rural areas like mine, they haven't caught on to the same extent. We do have a lot of retirees moving out of the Golden Horseshoe.
So they're still
GTA
doing
area.
subdivision when
Yeah.
when they can.
Yeah, when they
If
can.
what's not taken up by farmland.
A lot of the subdivisions right now, just the infrastructure's there, the plan's there, and they're just not doing anything with it right now. They're just farming soybeans instead, and they'll do that until the price of building.
Still makes sense to build.
Yeah.
Are they converting actual agricultural land to
Yep.
housing?
Yeah.
Crazy, because that's not happening where you and me.
Yeah, but
are.
we don't have hills. We live in an area where there's not one hill as far as you can see. So when you're driving down Highway 3 is the main highway in Essex County. So from 3 townships away, you can see the Ambassador Bridge and the high rises in Detroit, just because the whole county is
flat.
flat. It's like a prairie.
Our agricultural land reserve is, I mean, I don't think it's ever going to be in threat because it's floodplain,
And mountains.
right? Well, I mean, we have mountains, but most of that's not agricultural land reserve,
That's
right?
true,
It's just, so you can't build on the side of a mountain for the most part. But where we do have, we have some controversy with ours right now because the farmers are putting up these like 20,000 square foot houses.
I couldn't believe it when I was driving by. I was like, Steve, what is that?
Yeah. So
What
they'll
is
like,
going on?
so it'll be peat bog where they'll do blueberries and they'll pack it for 3 years. They'll preload. They'll maybe drive pilings down or something. They'll build a house there, 20,000 square feet, and then farm
On
the
their farm.
blueberries.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a little bit controversial, but we learned a couple of years ago with the flood in Abbotsford, like maybe those places are diked for a reason, and maybe we shouldn't build on peat bog.
Especially if you're going to invest into a 20,000 square foot.
Well, it's funny because the 100-year-old homes that are on those that they're tearing down, like peat bog rolls, right?
Okay.
Like the bottom of the ocean, kind of. It looks like that, like a beach almost. And you'll see a house sitting, and it'll be bent in half because that's what happens on peat bog over 100 years, right? So I wouldn't be building there, and I don't think they're going to be in threat. But if you're actually taking out farming land, that's a totally different
Yeah.
scenario.
Yep. So go back 2 minutes in our conversation, we're talking about the ownership level. We're all realtors. We brought this up in our team meeting a couple weeks ago. We find right now one of the things that's driving us nuts is all parents are just saying, my kid will never own a home. And if you keep accepting that as truth, it perpetuates them to not save money, to go finance a car or spend a couple more years in school. And they go, well, my parents even said I'm never going to own a home. But I just helped a first-time home buyer last week buy a 700 and well, he was approved for 750. He ended up spending 645, and I'm going.
Did he get the parents from his? Did he get the parents? Did he get the money from his parents?
No, he's an accountant. He saved up money, worked hard, but a lot of the parents are going, well, my kid's never going to own a home.
Yeah,
and that just perpetuates.
It's enabling.
Yeah,
it's enabling not to, and that sucks. And that's where I think, like, I just look at the people that are renting. I think of a few people I know right now that are renting, and the massive like summer vacations they go on, and I'm like, guys,
I'm not saying you're wrong, but just mathematically, the home ownership rate is declining in Canada.
Yeah, but
you think it's because the parents are telling the kids, you don't got a shot?
It's got to be a part of it,
right?
I think it all adds up together, but I don't think that today's generation of kids, as I sound like a geezer, really is putting it at top priority.
They're not.
All I wanted to do when I was 21, 22 years old was think about saving for a home.
What's under millennial? Gen Z? Is that what it's called?
I think so.
And then what are the TikTok kids? They're even lower than that? The new generation? I don't know. Like that group, I don't think they care about housing.
I don't think
Gen
guys
Z?
your age, for the most part, maybe a little bit.
No, my friend group cares about housing.
At what point, though?
Who do you hang out
At
with?
what? Yeah, well, you could be, there could be that.
That's a good point.
But there's also like, at what point do they think about starting to get in? Because I had a lot of friends that waited till 35 to get in, and they should be getting in at
Most
25.
of mine got in at mid-20s.
Yeah?
I even remember when I bought my first condo at 23 years old, I had like a housewarming, and I didn't really tell anyone I bought it. I just said like, I'm having a housewarming. I had people over, and at the time, most of my friends were renting or living at home. And when I told them, they're like, oh, what do you pay for rent here? I'm like, no, I bought it.
They're like,
And they're like a light bulb went off. They're like, what? And some of them started asking me questions like, well, what does it cost you to own it? And I would like show them the numbers. And it got people thinking, but they were not thinking about it. And again, they're, you know, when you're 23, 24 years old, you're kind of like, it's a fun part of life. You're just,
yep.
You know,
Well,
really,
I think there's too much of that. You're worried about the fun part of life right now. And I think the parents are enabling those kids worried about the fun part of life.
but you
rather
can
than
still have
preparing them for
fun.
life.
You can still have fun and buy a house, right? It doesn't have to be one or the other.
You sacrifice and buy a friggin' house. And then the rest of your life when you're older is going to be awesome. That's how it works, man. You either have the fun early and hate the rest of your life, or you work hard through your 20s and you get to a spot where you love the rest of your life.
You're not wrong. I'm just like,
I
that's
know I'm
just
not
not how
wrong.
most
Trust me,
people,
I've thought about this plenty.
Most people,
Yeah,
especially
because
if
they
hear
want
it from
immediate
you,
gratification. They don't want to hear it from me. That is
they
for
do
sure.
not want to hear from you.
These comments this late in the episode are not going to be good, but they can do it. Like I told you this before. I had an investor. He's living at home with his parents, and he's like, "I'm just going to buy something because I'm living at home rent free with my parents, and I want to own real estate, but I have no need to move out." So he bought a property. It cash flows negative, but he's like, I don't care if it cash flows negative $300-400 a month. I have a property. If I ever hate my parents, I'll kick my tenant out. I'll move in. It won't be a big deal. But he was, I want to say 23 years old. He went to the bank, and the bank's like, you need to prove where your down payment came from. He's like, look in the bank account. I've been saving. And they're like, you can't save this much. And he's like, what are you talking about? They're like, you've been saving. And they look back, and since he was like 15 years old, he's been putting every penny he ever earned into his bank account. He's like, it's all in your bank. What are you talking about? They didn't believe it.
Cody, do you have a lot of, because of the YouTube channel, I get a lot of people that call me that are like young, early 20s, people wanting to invest in real estate. And Steve, a lot of the videos they watch are like the interview you did with me where I went over my portfolio and just how I got into the market. And full transparency, I got lucky that I got in the market when I did, and it went really well to get to this point, okay? If I bought 2 years ago and started my journey now, anyways, that's a whole nother conversation. But a lot of these people would say to me like, what do you think about Windsor? I'm like, I have no clue what to tell you about Windsor. But it came up a lot.
Yeah, because it was so much cheaper.
Because it was so much cheaper, and at the time, it cash flowed.
It did, but the gap is closed. So like we went from you could buy a rental for $200,000 to now you can't buy anything under $400,000, right? So when condos were $500 to $600 in Toronto, and you could buy a single family home in Windsor for $200 near the university and rent out 5 rooms, yeah, it's super cash flow positive.
Right.
$400, the allure starts to disappear, and you go, Yeah, but it's Windsor and I don't live in Windsor. If you live in Windsor, great. Buy rental properties in Windsor.
But I feel like a lot of people not living in Windsor were buying properties
they
in
were
Windsor.
huge.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
And is that now coming back? Are those the people being like, ah, shit, now I got to sell?
Some of them.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
And they're sitting on the market right now, or are they moving?
There was a lot of what do you call the assignment sale guys? The wholesalers. There was a ton of wholesalers in Windsor.
Oh, did you
So it's
hear that story the other day?
man. Yeah, there was the woman that sold her house through a wholesaler.
Yeah.
To get out of real estate agent commissions and ended up paying 10% to the wholesaler.
It was the first pro realtor article I've read in a very
Yeah,
long time.
yeah.
We were saying that, like, as I feel the market's getting more negative and more risky over the next 18 months, probably 24 months, all the news articles are starting to get rosy.
For
I'm like,
realtors.
what? Well, just all around. There was a bunch of like, this is a good time and housing's becoming more affordable. Now there was this like, hey, you should have chosen a realtor article. I'm like, this can't be
That never happened.
in the media.
Yeah.
But it was. It sounded like there was a distressed lady who wanted to sell quick, didn't know what she signed, got totally
Agreed to a 2.5 month closing or something, and she thought she was getting cash that
flipped.
day.
He flipped the
contract.
contract, and wholesalers is just I'm not a big fan of that industry. I think they scam people, but that's probably another whole. Some people will disagree with me. I think they scam people.
I mean, there is definitely a service there if you need to close. If you're
Sure.
legitimately closed, if I like need a $500,000 2 days from now, and that guy can close, there's a service there. Whatever
That's
is.
different than the people that buy it and extend and then flip it before
Yeah,
closing.
yeah.
That's what
Because
I'm talking about.
That article, from what I read, sounded like it was a typical shadow flip situation. He secured a property at a certain price and then went searching and then didn't find someone to buy it.
We should have a wholesaler on the show. I think it'd be a fun episode. I've seen some wholesaler like Instagram stuff. They're like real estate agents that say that we're the bad people because we're trying to scam people. You guys don't understand. I just love to. That would be a fun debate.
I mean, it's definitely a debate because, like I say, there's a service there.
I feel like it's a bigger
It has
in
its
America,
place,
right? But
but-
you're seeing it.
Yeah. And now they're all trying to dump them off market, and they're sending out emails to their investor networks and everything, but they bought contracts at too high of a price. The interest rates aren't there. Probably they don't have the ability to close. And now
Do
they're
they
trying
all
to-
have outs though? Because this guy never actually had a I don't think he ever closed or. They
I don't
changed
think
the
a lot of them
price,
have
or-
outs, and then they end up signing a mutual release and saying keep my deposit of $5,000 because it's better than going to court.
And but the seller
$5
probably didn't
grand.
know. The seller probably didn't know that $5,000 is not a normal deposit in these markets. Well, maybe it is.
When
for
I
you guys.
started, we would put $100, $1,000. Like
That's crazy.
A couple years ago, it started getting bigger, 2,500, 510. Just in the last 2 years, we've been seeing 20, 25, 50,000. But it's still typically right now with our first time home buyers is 2,500 to $5,000.
We're
Geez.
5% of purchase
We're
price.
5%
Yeah, we don't do
for
that.
sure.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things in the contract that people don't focus on. They never focus on
Like, look at the price.
condition removal date. They never focus on deposit. They focus on price and closing date.
Yep.
And maybe not even closing date. They only focus on
And
price.
conditions. Yep.
The
they
amount
should.
of conditions, maybe.
Yep.
But the amount of offers I'm seeing where the guy's like, yeah, I need 3 weeks for financing. I'm like, your buyer is not pre-approved. Take this offer and stuff it.
Yeah.
A call I've gotten so much recently because there's more conditions and offers these days. So I have an agent call me, be like, hey, I'm sending over an offer. Like it's basically firm. There's just financing. I'm like, so it's conditional.
Not firm.
But it's so funny how they're like, yeah. Basically, listen, they're pre-approved. Like there's a condition in there, but
It's like
this is
being a little
basically-
bit pregnant.
This is a firm offer. I'm like, this is not a firm offer. This is the opposite of a firm offer.
Don't worry about it though, Tom.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Don't worry
Yeah,
about
don't
the
worry.
financing.
It'll all be
just,
good.
Just this one small condition
Yeah,
of 2 weeks
it's a
financing.
clean offer. There's just 3 conditions.
There's a
Well,
brokerage in our area, and they always go, "Oh, it's conditionally sold, so you can't show it." I'm like,
no, you can.
"Well, is it sold or is it not sold?" Yeah, it's conditionally sold. Okay, so it's not sold.
So it's not
Right.
It's subject to conditions.
Why wouldn't they want
yeah, but
showing
it's
still?
conditionally
Can
sold?
you phone your seller, please, and say that, we could have a backup offer
Right.
and you're not interested in showing it?
I hate conditionally
We are
sold.
seeing
It's sold or it's not.
Yeah.
we are seeing I track my numbers, and on my team this year it is a 23% accepted offer failure rate.
That's incredible.
So 23
On your listings.
on our total deals.
Okay,
So
and
I
your
think
buys.
we're sitting at like something like 61 deals or something, and we have 18 collapsed accepted offers. So they were accept. Now, when I went through those, 1 in 4 of those are our buyers, usually walking away due to inspection. But the other ones have almost entirely been financing.
do you guys have much HTS right now or no?
HTS.
House to sell.
We call it subject to sale.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not really. Yeah.
It's starting to show up, but it's not
Starting
really
to.
being accepted
We're
yet.
seeing it a lot right now.
Yeah. I mean, you can do that all you want. That's just a sign that you're probably not going to sell your house. Right? Like that's
Our market's always had them, so they're just coming back to it now.
I love accepting them because they usually come with a 24-hour out clause, and then I usually sell to somebody else.
Yeah.
It's a really good sales tactic to accept one on your listing, and then it gives the next buyer permission to give value at that level, and then they bump them. And people love knowing that somebody else is interested in it, and they love bumping someone and winning.
Humans want what they can't have.
do.
That
Yeah.
is just how we work. Cody, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, my
This was an
pleasure.
awesome conversation. I know you got a bit of a drive home today.
4 hours.
So a bit
All good.
So we won't keep you too much longer. But for anyone listening that wants to learn more about your market, your team, or
Sure.
just to reach out, how do they connect with you?
Localhometeam.ca.
Localhometeam.ca.
Links down below in the description of this video, as long as Cody sends them to me.
Thank you everybody for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you to Realty Ninja for sponsoring this episode. If you need an awesome website, I'd highly recommend checking out realtyninja.com/Tom. You can start your trial and you do not pay until you launch your website. We will see you next Sunday. Bye.
Thanks, Cody, man. That was
Thanks.
awesome.
Thanks, Cody.
That was fantastic.